Hello, and welcome to Growth Cultivated, a Blue Bonsai Group podcast where we explore smarter, more sustainable growth for health, wellness, and aesthetics groups. I am your host, Michelle Cassini. Today with us, we have Brian Meisenburg. He's the founder of Applied Fitness, a boutique personal training studio in Buffalo, New York. It's really been redefining what a fitness business can look like since 2007, almost 20 years now. Where most studios cast a wide net, Brian made the deliberate and at the time, possibly a little controversial decision early on that they would serve the 40 and over population exclusively. Well, it paid off, and Applied Fitness now operates two locations in the Buffalo area, with a third opening in Q3 of this year and a fourth planned for Q4. Brian leads a team of 5 coaches and has deliberately stepped back from training himself, really to focus on the vision, more networking, and the chapter of the next growth. So, welcome to the show, Brian. It's so nice to see you and talk to you again today.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, Michelle. It's very excited about our conversation today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, why don't you kick us off and tell us a little bit about Applied Fitness and the history and your clientele and the services that you offer?
Yeah, of course. You did a great job of the intro. It's funny when I hear it now. I hear the 20 years and almost 20 years, and gosh, it feels like 20 years. It's been a heck of a ride. As you mentioned, we it is a series of personal training studio gyms in Buffalo, New York. So we do one-on-one personal training. We do medical weight loss, and we've recently shifted into the more longevity, anti-aging space. And I think that's where the industry is going. I think that's where society is going. I think more and more people are interested in taking control of their health and fitness and wellness just outside of the gym, outside of nutrition, but their whole wellness aspect. So yeah, so we made that pivot, and it's been a heck of a ride. And as you mentioned too, we are growing. Third location is in 2 months, fourth location by the end of the year. So things are looking good, and we're plugging ahead.
That's wonderful. Yeah, you guys must be doing something right to have so many locations, especially two starting in the same year. So congrats on that success.
Yeah.
I'm curious to find out
Thank you.
when you actually made that decision to really focus just on the 40 and over clientele population. And if you can just talk a little bit about what helped you make that decision, maybe some of the feelings, emotions you were going through, and how that's really played out for you.
Yeah, great question. I made that pivot, which was controversial and a little scary at the time when I did it. But what I had found was that the industry and the whole fitness in general focuses more on the 20 and 30-year-olds. And, I started my business and I worked with everybody, but I started to realize that I really enjoyed working with the more mature clientele, the over 40. I enjoyed that clientele more. I found that statistically, they were typically better clients because a little bit more affluent business owners, civic leaders. So the retention was much higher with them as opposed to younger population. And the third point was, as I mentioned, that the industry just focuses on the 25 to 35-year-olds, the high energy, the boot camps, the cookie cutter programs. And there's nothing wrong with that. Those are all awesome, but no one really thought about the 40-year-olds. It was almost like they were forgotten about. And I wanted to create a space where everything could be handcrafted for them, but also a place they could feel seen and they could feel validated and they could be amongst their peers, that they weren't in a setting where the person to the left of them was 20 years old and the other person next to them was where they felt out of place. This was a non-intimidating atmosphere that they could really sort of focus on achieving not just the aesthetics, but also more of the health and wellness. So that was why I started that and went that direction.
And how did that end up playing out for you? How's the success and the growth been since you made that decision?
It was slow at first, and then it sort of hockey sticked. At first it was slow because I had to change everything from the way our studio was set up to, more importantly, the marketing. Our call outs, our hooks, the way we talked. Finding staff, finding team was also a challenge. because, most of the pool of the trainers, they were used to working in big gyms that trained everybody, that to bring them in and put them into our ecosystem and kind of educate them that, okay, listen, we're dealing with a little bit more mature clientele here. They probably might have a back problem. They might have a knee problem. We have to be cognizant of that. We have to be able to focus on helping them and still give them an amazing level of service. And so that was kind of the biggest challenge was that shift internally as well as external to marketing.
Definitely a huge culture shift, and you're right that, based on what everybody's experience was, there was probably a lot of internal shifting that needed to happen, psychologically, just to be able to meet the demands of this new clientele. What were some of the changes that you had to make from a marketing standpoint in terms of, maybe different strategies or campaigns that you ran? Because I'm sure, especially as longevity really is recently coming more onto the scenes. I know the people who listen to this podcast, many of them are starting to think about that. And maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the modifications you had to make, transitioning the population that you were serving, but also maybe some of the services and even products that you were changing as well.
Yeah, sure. So as far as from the fundamentals of just even the exercise selection of going away from the high intensity interval training, commonly referred to as HIIT training, to more of a little lower impact training style. So from the grassroots setting of how we did the workouts, how we scheduled the sessions, how we focused on nutrition. Over 40, we focus more on metabolism, balancing hormones, so even nutrition changes from what it was, in our 20s and 30s. So we had to change that. The whole onboarding process, a lot of people came to us that were never really members of a gym before, or who felt intimidated, but they felt comfortable with us. So even the onboarding of having to, okay, the first 6 weeks are going to be scripted to make them feel comfortable that this is a gym, that they realize this is a little bit different than a gym setting. So basically all of our operations, all standard operation procedures had to be revamped for that. So as gearing it towards the clients over 40. And the same thing for the medical weight loss. Now that we're into that, into the peptide therapy, again, it's relatively new. So again, making them feel comfortable in that transition, that they're in good hands and that everything is in house, and really, really reinforcing the messaging that we're going to guide them from point A to point B.
Got it. And this really new culture that you were building at the studio, as you shifted to the second location and now you're looking ahead to opening the third location and the fourth location, how do you really preserve that culture and really ensure that your systems and processes are adapted efficiently in these new locations?
Yeah, that's really come down to just being able to have, the right team, having the right people in the boat, rolling in the right direction, having the right team, because that was the biggest thing at first. Having been the sole trainer and then bringing trainers on for so many years, everything was in my head. So
Mhm.
when I opened the second location, everything got diluted because I wasn't there to make the decisions. I wasn't there, things that came intuitively. So I kind of had to zoom out and kind of teach them, and really standardize everything and make it into a manual of, okay, when this happens, this is what we do. And that was kind of the biggest challenge, was just getting everybody on board. Dilution of the vision. It's easy to kind of just plug away, but I have to reinforce the vision that, okay, this is where we're going.
Mm.
It's thin air, meaning that there's really no other place, especially in Buffalo, but not even in the country, that there's only a few other places that's even kind of doing what we're doing as far as bringing the wellness into the gym. Usually you have your gyms, you have your wellness, you have your nutrition, you have your massage therapy, all that is in silos. And to do everything in one place, it's new even for us. So some of this stuff, to be perfectly honest, we're just kind of making this up and hoping for the best. So it's definitely been the number one challenge.
Sometimes you can't, you just have to take the risk and you have to grow. You have to, what is that saying? You gotta fly the plane while you're building it, because otherwise you'll never take off the ground,
Right,
right? So it is a
right,
little bit
right.
of that trial and error, I imagine. Absolutely. Well, What really intrigued me was you had mentioned that even as you guys have evolved and really changed some of your operational procedures and practices and just the way that you do business and serve your clients has really changed in the sense of some of the administrative functions that you've had have now been replaced with artificial intelligence and some automations. I'm interested to learn more about what you've done in that area and how that has improved the efficiency across the studios.
It was more of a dimmer switch at first. I've been using the AI for actually a couple years now. It's just funny this year now. All of a sudden, it seems like everybody is using it or at least playing with it. But it's been a few year process. And at first, more of a dimmer switch. We're just kind of using a little bit for marketing for things. But then I started about a year ago. Started really going deep dive into this and realizing, okay, I can start to automate or use AI for some of our back office stuff, like for attendance. And then it was like, okay, well, and then maybe I can start using AI for accounts receivable. And then it just kind of mushroomed where we were actually able to eliminate or maybe not eliminate, but reposition some of our coaches that they didn't have to worry about doing that stuff, that they were able to just coach. So now we have it where AI kind of automates some of the workouts, certainly automates the onboarding, automates the nutrition, habit tracking, all that is automated. And it's what I call the AI meets HI, the human intelligence, where AI can do the data collection and analysis and can give the coaches real-time information. So when they see their clients, they can give a better level of service because they know in real time, okay, I see you're not eating enough protein. I know you're not drinking enough water, whatever it might be. They can do that, where years ago that would have been impossible to do. So it really has been a win-win-win for the customer, for the client, win for the coaches, because they don't have to do all that tedious work, because coaches hate doing that stuff anyways. They just want to coach. They just want to help. And so it's really helped them, and it's helped us grow because we're much more efficient, through AI and automations and agents and all those things. It's just amazing what we can do now.
Well, and it sounds like it's not only increased the efficiency, but it's increased the quality, that of the service that you're able to give because there's now more time for the coaches to really dig into some of that data and be able to have more insights to share and really coach in a way that maybe it would be more in the moment versus more strategic with the data that they're getting previous to them meeting one on one with their clients. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Awesome. And so then you transitioning a little bit because you did talk a little bit about the GLP-1 and the peptide therapy, just the evolving nature of what you're offering. I'm curious how you are thinking of the messaging side of that because as you mentioned being kind of a really one size fits all because you're right there's not a lot of studios out there. They are very much siloed in terms of the services that they offer, but the lines are kind of bleeding with you guys where it's really a lot of crossover. So can you talk a little bit about how you do that with marketing and your messaging? Because a lot of times, marketing, you will be attracting one certain specific type of customer with specific messaging. How do you really branch out into these different lines of services and products across all your different customers?
Yeah, it's actually ironically been a little bit easier than I thought. I thought, initially when we started this about a year ago, really getting medical weight loss, it was a little bit more of a challenge, but I just think that over time, everybody knows the GLPs and everybody knows that, okay, if you're on this, you need to strength train and you need to follow a specific diet. So in a sense, I think we were ahead of the curve, but I think that really science and community is just coming up to catching up to, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to make sure I still strength train and I make sure that I do a protein rich diet. I might just as well do this in one place as opposed to, going to an online clinic and getting the medication and then joining a gym that doesn't know anything about it. So I think kind of it was kind of being in the right place at the right time. So I wish I could say that I looked back and I knew we were going to be here. A little bit of luck, as always in business, that the market just sort of caught up, and people were like, okay, I see myself and my staff were GLP certified, we're metabolic specialists. So again, all that stuff kind of played into the role of the consumer of, okay, if I'm going to do the GLP, the medical weight loss. I want to do it right. And that kind of brought in new cohorts of people that may not have even tried the GLP, but they're like, okay, I trust you guys. I'm going to try this. And the way we market it is we just do it for 12 weeks. Is it's a short-term thing. We view this as training wheels, as something we don't want people to be on the medication for life. We just want to help them for 12 weeks, reset their metabolism, balance their hormones, and then start to taper off the medication. So I think that resonates with a lot of people. They're like, because that's the biggest fear is that they don't want to be on
Uh-huh.
it for life and they don't want to gain the weight back. So those are the two things that, okay, it's going to be a 12-week program and we're going to teach you all the tools to keep the weight off once you lose the weight. So I think from a marketing standpoint, that has been a home run. And I just think from a ethical standpoint, I think it's a great way to help people jumpstart their results, get that initial weight loss, and just keep the momentum going. Just
Mhm.
start to feel better about themselves.
Well, because then they're going to it's that trust that you're building with them. They can see the results, but then they can also maintain those results. And now you've got a loyal customer who's going to continue utilizing your services because you've proven to them that they can do both and they can really continue on very much in a healthy manner. But this is maybe something that just helps kind of kickstart with what they've been struggling with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, 100%.
Got it. So I'm really interested to learn more about the human interaction and the AI, the HI plus AI, as you had mentioned. Can you explain how you maybe went about some of that? Because I'm sure that there's probably owners out there that are like, well, where do I even start? How would I start something like this? And, I'm sure that your process for that has changed and evolved over these past few years that you've been utilizing AI. But what's kind of the thought process and what are your steps to starting a project where you are bringing automation into play?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question because I get that from other business owners, whether fitness or outside of fitness. That I just think it's intimidating, and I think now, AI is it's here now. Everybody knows it, but I think people are starting to feel, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where to start, and I get that. But what I tell everybody is just kind of automate, use the AI for some of the stuff that is not client facing. That is some of the back office stuff. Whether for us, it's obviously like I said, it was like attendance, accounts receivable, but for any business and. I don't care if you're a dry cleaner or a plumber. You can do that for ordering parts. You can do that for whatever the business is. And I think that's where it helps the human part because personal training. Like when I started the AI, my team was like, we're personal trainers, we're fitness. They didn't want to take away that human interaction part. And again, I kind of had to share with them that vision that we're not taking that away. It's amplifying what we do. And I think that's just kind of the misnomer that people are, well, if I AI, it's going to be impersonal, it's going to be robotic. But I think that's just how you do it. I mean, we're still providing the service, we're still giving them the service, but we're just getting that back office, that assistance that is it's like the internet. You don't see the internet, but it's there. It's always working, kind of like AI. It's always doing its thing, but we're doing our thing. And it really has, I think it's just to start to slow and steady is what I tell everybody to do that, just automate one thing. You see that it doesn't break and then layer on top of that. And I think that's where people need to start.
And I would argue too that I think really most small business owners, they probably get into their business, whatever the business may be, because of the service or the product that they are selling. And it's that relationship building that they are excited to build. It's all the business stuff and the back end stuff that comes along that kind of sometimes bottlenecks things and kind of surprises maybe some business owners how time consuming it could be, and it takes away from other basically their main intentions of starting the business. And so that's really where I see AI being able to help is giving those small business owners back some of their time to really focus on their main premier services and products and being able to build those relationships and offer them to their clientele.
Yeah, and you know what, you just said it, and I failed to, but you said it perfectly. You're right, it's time. At the end of the day, that there's only so many hours. So a business owner or anybody, if you can buy back a couple hours of your time, I mean, you can do higher level stuff. I think that's probably you just said it perfectly. That's the number one thing and even for my coaches, I'm trying to get them to use the AI on their end just to make them, again, what you said, so they get more time back so that they can focus on more thing, whether it's making content or writing a blog post. They can do the stuff that's going to help the business more of what their expertise is in fitness and wellness, as opposed to the tedious stuff. So yeah, the time issue is, that's definitely the best thing. That's the biggest asset we have.
Agreed. And with you guys taking on AI and preserving that human interaction, you've got, 4 locations now that you're gonna be working with, 2 opening, obviously. This pivot to longevity and wellness and really combining that with the fitness. You've obviously got a lot going on right now, but I can tell that you're the type of business owner, especially since you've stepped back from doing some of the training, that you're very forward thinking and you're very strategic and what you are planning for the future. So would you be able to share with us some of the thoughts that you have about the future, and really, maybe what are some things you're thinking about, or maybe what are some challenges that you're being faced with right now that you're looking for solutions and areas of opportunity to help build the business or expand?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as far as, I think fitness is, especially in my niche, I see it going to a point in the future where, everything is automated, where they come in and almost, and there's actually businesses doing this now, that where they come in, you log in and your workout just shows up on a screen. We're seeing that now with, like, I think Lululemon has something like that. So I really see that's kind of where ultimately it's going. I think there's always going to be the role of the coach, the professional for accountability. So I think we're always going to have a position in account, because you can have the best workout program, the best meal plan, but if you don't do it, doesn't matter. So I think that's going to kind of be exciting, because that's where the future's going, kind of a challenge and scary in the same part, because it's like, where do we fall into that category? I think business in general is going more, I think, honestly, I think probably websites are probably going to almost be a thing of the past. With agentic, I think it's just going to be a matter of just talking to your agent, and they'll gather the information and they'll order. I mean, we do that now at our we have Amazon, for instance, that we just tell our agent to order paper towels, and the next day paper towels just show up. So I don't need to go online anymore. So I think it's just going to get easier and easier for people to be more efficient and be more effective and more focused. So that's, scary, because it's what happens to jobs, what happens to us all. But just like everything, when, one thing comes in, we all get nervous, but jobs will just shift. When, the computer started, people who were on a typewriter were nervous. When the internet started, people who were, bookkeepers were nervous, and it just shifts. And I think that ultimately we're all going to be better off for it. But there's just definitely going to be a learning curve for each of us in
It's
all
just part of the
professions.
evolution, right? It's all in part of the evolution of how we're really transforming technologically, but I think also in business savviness. We're all, no matter what profession it is or what industry, you're still going to need humans to build connections. You're still going to need the, as you said, accountability in your industry. Somebody who can give you that tough love, kick in the behind, when you need it, and be able to emotionally connect with you when things are really tough and when you're really overwhelmed, and being able to overcome those obstacles. And that's not something that an agent can do, an AI agent. You really are still going to need that human interaction, as you mentioned. So as we wrap up, Brian, I always ask my guests the same question as we end, and it's really you speaking to the audience and the small business owners directly to answer, what is it that you know now after having this business for almost 20 years that you wish you would have known then when you were starting out in 2007? Maybe looking back on yourself and giving yourself the advice as a new business owner, what would you tell yourself?
I think that's such a fun and interesting question. I remember hearing the saying one time, that was, your business works on you more than you work on it. And that is so true because any business owner out there will say that like you learn your strengths, your weaknesses, you're constantly trying to evolve, you're constantly stepping outside of your comfort zone, you're constantly taking on fear, you're constantly taking on, we'll say debt, not just financial debt, but knowledge debt, time debt. So I think what I've learned now is that it it's not the straight up that I thought it was going to be. There was obviously peaks and valleys, and we had some recession, we had pandemic, and we had all that stuff. But I certainly learned that we always, if you just keep going and just not giving up. I mean, I've seen businesses come and go. That if you just keep going and not give up, that eventually we'll get to the other side of every crisis. And I think my pain tolerance has gone up. I look back now, the problems I have now 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, would have been crushing. But now I'm like, okay, I can get through this. So, with time, with sets and reps, with experience, you get stronger and you get more efficient. And wisdom is I think probably a great attribute to have.
Wonderful. Great advice, Brian. Definitely have loved our time together and so appreciate you spending this time here. For those of you in the audience, thanks for joining us on Growth Cultivated, a Blue Bonsai group podcast. If you found this conversation helpful, please be sure to subscribe and share with others in the industry. Until then, keep cultivating smarter growth.